The Imperial Navy was, by necessity, very diligent with procedures, prioritization, and command structures. At its peak, the Imperial Navy included no fewer than 25,000 active Star Destroyers, along with millions if not billions of other craft ranging from Star Dreadnought size to smaller corvettes. Within the command structure necessary to ensure such a large machine functioned efficiently, Imperial forces were organized into distinct commands responsible for specific tasks, and sometimes there was conflict or competing interests between these groups. Part of this organization was the development of a series of emergency codes to ensure the proper prioritization of objectives. Often a commander in charge of a particular area would refuse to aid even important worlds being assaulted by rebels if they felt like it would reflect poorly on them or their own assignment, or just really make things harder for them personally. Such was the case a year before the Battle of Yavin when the rebels raided Kuat. The forces of Kuat, arguably the most important world that remained in the Empire next to Coruscant, were under assault by a small rebel fleet. The Kuat Yards requested help from surrounding forces, particularly from a force operating out of Freyja, home of Incom Corporation, but despite Kuat's importance, the commander of that fleet, operating from the ISD Tyranny, refused the request, despite the ongoing problems at Kuat. Now, Kuat probably had enough warships on their own to maybe deal with this, so part of the scale of the problem does come from game mechanics in Empire at War. Having a raid on Kuat seems like a cool mission, so maybe all the Kuat forces were just busy. Either way, it took the invocation of the highest priority emergency code to turn the tide of that battle, Emergency Code 0. Emergency Code 0 essentially told any nearby Imperial forces to drop everything and assist where they were requested. It's unknown if there was a certain importance a world or a commander needed to have to invoke the code, but it was enough to force Tyranny to assist Kuat, driving away the rebel force. Unfortunately for them, the rebel assault had been a diversion specifically engineered to lure the Freyja forces away. Having to choose between the two, Kuat was probably the more important target, and with the Imperial territory being so large, this helps illustrate how the fracturing of the Empire happened, and how the rebels were able to be so effective. This is something that the rebels in particular, but other factions more generally, often take advantage of in Star Wars. In this particular instance, the Empire may have outnumbered the rebels, but the rebels had the freedom to strike wherever they needed to, only worrying about a few hidden bases and mostly operating from dispersed cells, whereas the Imperials had to stay somewhat on the defensive at all points. The only thing they really had going for them was this argument that they could keep the galaxy safe, so they couldn't really sacrifice different areas in favor of fighting the rebels at specific points to crush them all at once. For the Empire, further losses at either Kuat or Freyja would have been a straight-up loss, but for the rebels, unless they were fully trapped, they had greater operational freedom. During the Yuuzhan Vong War, the New Republic experienced the same situation, where the Yuuzhan Vong had a massive force, but they were also free to attack wherever they wanted. They had their world ships coming in, but the New Republic covered pretty much the entire galaxy, and they had to focus on defending all points. It wasn't until later in the war that the New Republic was kind of pushed to the position of being a bunch of rebel cells, and the Yuuzhan Vong had to protect the entire galaxy, or their acquisitions in the entire galaxy, that the New Republic was able to turn the tide of the war again. So this isn't a problem that's unique to the Empire, but there were some specifics of it in how the Imperials would try to kind of one-up each other, or wouldn't care as much about other people's commands as their own personal fiefdoms, that contributed to the rebels' gains in these periods. That's also why after Endor, the Empire was able to disassemble or fall into as many different warring factions as it did. Either way, that's going to do it for today's video. If you've enjoyed, consider leaving a like, subscribing, or turning notifications on with the bell for more. Thanks for watching, and I hope to see you next time.